Can the Dallas Cowboys upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 1? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On crossover podcast between the Cowboys and Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That is prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. I am Marcus Mosher from Locked On Cowboys. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. I'm joined by David Harrison from Locked On Bucs. Check him out on Twitter at DHarrison82. David, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Marcus. How are you doing? Are you ready? It's game week. First game week of the season. Let's do this.
I forgot what it was like to be stressed before a game, right? Like you'd miss this feeling of like being stressed and anxious and excited all at the same time. So it's nice that we're back. So let's go ahead and talk about this matchup, David. For you, what's the one thing that's the biggest storyline coming out of Tampa Bay right now?
Yeah, if I have to pick the biggest, because there's a surprising amount about this team that we really don't know yet. And I don't know that, if you'd have told me that was going to be the case back in like January when they got eliminated from the playoffs, I would have called you kind of crazy. But like now we pretty much know the squad that's going to be, but so much has happened this offseason with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But the singular item that the Dallas Cowboys have to be looking to exploit, and the Buccaneers fans, media, the team themselves have to be wondering how it's going to go, is that interior offensive line. And I know that nobody thinks offensive line is sexy. Nobody thinks trench play is the most fantastic. I mean, you, to your credit, have a trench player hanging up on your wall. So I'll give you credit for that, because usually it's the Deons and the Romos that are hanging up on people's walls, right? So shout out to you for being a smarter football mind. But, it's hard to blame people because that's what's exciting. But that doesn't happen unless the quarterback has protection, or vice versa for the Deion Sanders of the world, unless the defensive line is getting some penetration. And when you look at the front, Ryan Jensen's obviously out. Ali Marpet is out because he's retired. He's skinny now, living up his life, no longer offensive lineman shaped. And then they're replacing another guard because Alex Kappa made his way north up to the Cincinnati Bengals. So you've got 3 new interior offensive linemen. Tom Brady, for as long as I can remember, the key to beating Tom Brady is what? Pressure up the middle. Well, every year he gets a little bit older, he gets a little bit slower. That key becomes an even bigger key. So the Dallas Cowboys are obviously going to look to do this against Tom. But now that you have 3 new interior offensive linemen, the question is, can the Buccaneers stop the Cowboys from being effective?
What's funny for the Cowboys, it's the offensive line, but it's the tackles, right?
Yeah.
Tyron Smith out until at least December with a knee/hamstring injury. Lyle Collins, who started week 1 against Tampa Bay last year, he's off to Cincinnati after the Cowboys moved on from him. So it's going to be a rookie Tyler Smith playing left tackle and an undrafted free agent Terrence Steele playing right tackle. I mean, David, it's kind of scary because Todd Bowles can do some crazy stuff up front with his pass rush. Shaq Barrett is phenomenal. Joe Tryon is a guy that we liked in the first round. Got to admit, pretty nervous about the Cowboys offensive line going into this game.
Yeah, and like you said, Todd Bowles, I mean, he's the head coach now, but make no mistake, he is still the defense coordinator for this team. The Todd Bowles defense is going to be alive and well in Tampa, and absolutely, he's looking at those soft spots, and you can guarantee the Buccaneers are going to test it very, very early. Shaq Barrett's going to look to make a very big statement on national television, get back to his really high sack numbers from 2 years ago. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka looking to prove the Buccaneers right, moving on from Jason Pierre-Paul, a veteran who's been very steady for him, or for the team, moving on from him, letting JTS step up into that starting role. And then you've also got some other guys. Akeem Hicks is a guy, it's like 2 podcasts removed, but I've got to give shout out to other media members around the Tampa circle, because Chris Collinsworth was in town to kind of do his pre-homework, do his pre-gaming for Sunday night. And he was overheard by Evan Klosky of WTSP 10 Tampa Bay down there, our Tegna partner affiliate in Tampa Bay, saying that if Akeem Hicks is healthy this year, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can get healthy Akeem Hicks, no way anybody is stopping this defensive line. So when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, not just Shaquille Barrett and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but Akeem Hicks, William Golston, the underrated stud on that defensive line, and Vita Vea, it's his first year as a team captain, so he's looking to prove the Buccaneers right in that decision.
It really feels like this game is going to be won in the trenches, right? I mean, we could talk about the star power at quarterback between Tom Brady and Dak Prescott and the weapons all over the place, but like, what offensive line can play better and what defensive line can get pressure. The Bucs are probably a little bit more experienced on the defensive line. The offensive tackles are certainly better than what Dallas has, but we'll see. Like these, if you're a big football nerd, like these are the matchups to really watch. Like Vita Vea against Tyler Biadasz and Osa Odigizua against Luke Gadecki. Like that's where this game is going to be decided.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned football nerds. I mean, you're obviously one with your jersey hanging up back there. I also am one. I mean, I wish I was a little bit better. Like I can't evaluate hand placement and foot placement and all that stuff on an offensive lineman the way that some of these guys out there.
But you can tell when a guy's losing, though, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell when someone's winning or losing, or when someone looks shaken, or when their base is offline and all that stuff. But I mean, that is, a lot of people. What do? We watch the ball when we watch football, right? And look, for a fan, enjoy it, live it up, eat your nachos, drink your beer, watch the football. That's where the action is happening. But for guys like you and me, and like a lot of our listeners and a lot of our viewers, I'm sure on your channel just as much as mine, this is where that game is won and lost. This is where the nucleus of everything happens. That's where the football nerds, as you put it, which I embrace that title, that's where we live.
All right, we're going to talk about some of the big matchups to watch in this game between the Bucs and the Cowboys. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, Canada, and the UK. Book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Or find an affordable economy car if you're on a budget and you just need to get from point A to point B. Or if you want to test drive that new electric vehicle that you've had your eye on for a while now, you can do that as well. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. All right, David, for you, what is the biggest matchup that you're looking forward to watching in this game?
Yeah, as much as I'm excited to see the trench play and the pass rushers on both sides of the field. I mean, look, I'm, Buccaneers fans, they love this about me and they hate this about me sometimes. I am a football fan first. So I don't want blowouts. I don't like blowouts. I'm an Ohio State fan as well. I don't like, like Notre Dame, Ohio State kind of going down to the wire. That's my style of football. I don't like blowouts. I want to see nice competitive football, and that's usually what you get in the National Football League. But for one of the key matchups in this game, I'm actually going to go away from the trenches, away from the pass rushers and the pass protectors, to the receivers and the defensive backs. But specifically, I'm looking at the Buccaneers defensive backs, the Dallas Cowboys receivers, because obviously Amari Cooper is no longer in Dallas. Everybody's making a huge deal about that, and how well is that, or how much is that going to impact Dak Prescott and this number one Dallas Cowboys offense from a year ago? I think it's going to be significant, but I don't know that it's not going to like take Dallas from like the top, offensive, production, yard production, points and all that stuff, offense to say 15. I think maybe 1 to, I don't know, 4 or 5, I think might be a little bit realistic, but then there's some injuries, there's some concerns there. Maybe I'm just underselling Amari Cooper. You can tell me, but what I do know is on the other side of the ball, Carlton Davis III. He's your number one cornerback. He's back for a reason. Very talented guy, but also very physical guy. So we're going to see how these referees are going to call this week one primetime matchup. Are they going to let some hand fighting happen, or is Carlton Davis going to get a flag early and then have to kind of play off a little bit, which is not really his style? Jamel Dean, Mike Edwards, and Sean Murphy-Bunting are 3 Buccaneers defensive backs, all entering walk years, are all in their final years of their rookie deals. 1 or maybe 2 of them are getting new deals. Who is it going to be? That decision-making process is going to start in week 1, but Jamel Dean is cornerback number 2. So he's going to be on the guy on the field going up against your Michael Gallups, your Noah Browns, or Jalen Tolbert, a guy who I loved coming out of the Senior Bowl. I love the way he entered the Senior Bowl, kind of a last-second invite, really no notice, showed up, still balled out, still impressed NFL coaches. So I'm really excited to see Jalen Tolbert get his career going. and then just how Dak Prescott navigates with the new weapons he has, with the new formation, I suppose, of the weapons without Amari Cooper, and how he goes up against the secondary. Because for all the differences between this year's Buccaneers team and last year's Buccaneers team, the secondary, by and large, except for the strong safety position, is basically the same. So Dak knows these guys. He's seen them. He's played against them. Granted, lost, but he's had the opportunity to use his hindsight, which is always 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do some more film study. How does Dak come out? Because I think Dak is an underrated cerebral quarterback, right? So I think this is where his football IQ can really help the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, we should point out Amari Cooper had a massive game last year against the Bucs. I mean, just was dominant in that game. CeeDee Lamb had an early touchdown, but other than that, didn't do too much. You mentioned it. Like, CeeDee Lamb is the guy. And Mike McCarthy talked about it this week. Like, hey, everybody's going to focus their attention on CeeDee Lamb. We anticipate him being the guy that gets doubled pretty frequently. We've got to do a good job of making sure we get him the ball and avoid those double teams. So I expect the Cowboys to be pretty creative, right? It might be lining him up on the outside on some snaps, bringing him into the slot on third downs. Don't be surprised that they even use him in the backfield and try to get him touches that way. The offense is just, it's going to have to run through Dalton Schultz and CeeDee Lamb. So if I would be shocked if CeeDee Lamb leaves this game without like 10 plus targets, like that would be an absolute shock to me.
No, absolutely. I mean, you go back to last year, like you mentioned, and the way that Amari Cooper kind of balled out, but then CeeDee Lamb also kind of being out there. It's amazing because I've listened to some other podcasts, some guys that I really respect around the NFL media circles, and everybody's talking about, man, remember how many times the Cowboys threw the ball? Man, remember how many times Dak Prescott had to go back there? I mean, 58 pass attempts, right? 58 pass attempts. But what nobody is remembering, the Buccaneers ran the ball less. The Buccaneers actually had fewer carries. Now, they had fewer snaps as well, so Tom Brady only threw the ball 50 times. But the Dallas Cowboys actually ran the ball more than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did, despite the fact that Dak Prescott threw the ball 58 times. So you have to imagine one or both of these teams is coming in and say, you know what, maybe let's mix it up a little bit. Let's not come out with the exact same attack, even though both teams put up a good amount of points. Both teams kind of came out. I think I remember correctly. Both teams came out, even the Dallas Cowboys who lost, said, you know what, we did some good things though against a national champ, a Super Bowl champion. So you had some things to feel good about. Obviously, both end up in the postseason. But I think if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there's already been a publicly stated intention to run the ball more in 2022 than they did in 2021. Leonard Fournette, the overweight Leonard Fournette stuff was overblown to begin with, but going to training camp, he looks really good. He's definitely bigger, but it's a good bigger, if that makes any sense. Yep. And he's one more year experience. He's one more year a veteran. Rashad White, the rookie out of Arizona State, which I love because that's my alma mater. So, I love seeing a Sun Devil thrive in the National Football League. As RB2, he looks like he's got the makeup of a 3-down back. Then you still have Giovanni Bernard, who's a little bit, banged up. But if he's healthy enough to run in week one, he's got some pass catching ability. And Keyshawn Vaughn, your fourth running back in Tampa, actually had a really good preseason. So with the tools the Buccaneers have in that backfield, I just can't imagine Tom Brady throwing the ball more than 40 times, which is still a lot, right? That's still a lot of passes for a single game, but it's also 10 pass attempts fewer than last year.
I would expect both teams to run the ball significantly more in this game than they did last year for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Brady's 45 years old. They've had some injuries at receiver. Now, we can talk about whether we think Chris Godwin and Russell Gage are going to play, but even if they do, I don't think you want those guys running a million routes. I think both teams have some uncertainty on their offensive line. So if they can just kind of keep this game close into the third and fourth quarter, I kind of think both sides are going to be happy with that, David. But for me, the other matchup that I'm really excited to see, it's Mike Evans against Trevon Diggs, right? Like, Evans is the healthiest, most established guy with Tom Brady. He's the receiver with double-digit touchdowns in each of the last 2 years. And Diggs is the Cowboys all-pro cornerback. Like, they're okay giving up some yards, but they need Diggs to make a play or two. And he made one last year. He almost made one in the final drive before Tampa Bay went down and scored the touchdown at the end of the game. But that's the one. If the Cowboys are going to win this game, they've got to find a way to slow down Mike Evans.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be key because the Buccaneers, when you look at just a strategic standpoint, that's going to be key for the Buccaneers is to get Mike Evans rolling early and to keep him rolling as much as they can, because not only is he a guy who has shown just throughout the years with quarterbacks much less talented than Tom Brady that he can be that reliable guy, but like you mentioned, Chris Godwin, listen, we'll see what they do with him. A full participant on Wednesday's injury report. I don't know that I think that he's actually going to play. I think that's more mind games, forcing the Dallas Cowboys to prepare for number 14 to be out there and then potentially not actually having him out there. But Julio Jones is a guy who's still kind of getting up to speed. Russell Gage has had some injuries that he's dealt with during preseason and training camp. So really, I mean, when you look beyond Mike Evans, wide receivers 2, 3, and 4 all have reasons that you may not be able to rely on them for an entire game here in week 1, right? When we get to week 4, maybe, but in week 1, you may not be able to rely on those guys. Then you have Scotty Miller, Brashad Perryman, Jalen Darden behind them. And those are role players. They're nice role players, right? But if you're looking at one of those guys to be your number 2 receiver, then you've got some problems. Cam Brate, Kyle Rudolph, and K-Dot and the 3 tight ends, I think they're obviously going to get mixed in there as well. And how they kind of mix in with the Dallas Cowboys linebackers at second level of that defense. And if they can be effective enough to pull the pass rush back, make the Dallas Cowboys play less aggressive on defense than they want to, that's going to play big into the Buccaneers' hands if they can make that happen.
All right, let's go ahead and make some score predictions for this game and give some of our thoughts. So as the opposing team, as the away team, David, I'll let you go first. What's your thoughts on this game and who wins and why?
Yeah, so as of right now, or at least as the last time I checked, these lines are always moving, right? And we'll see how the injury reports start to play into this. But last time I checked on betonline.net, the Buccaneers are 2.5-point favorites. I like that line because I think this game is going to be very, very competitive. We'll get into this more when we get to the NFC East conversations, right? But I do think the Cowboys kind of came back down to earth a little bit this offseason. But I don't think anything is going to tank them, to an extreme amount that some people maybe think the Dallas Cowboys are going to fall off this year. But I do still think the Buccaneers come away with the win. I take the over, but barely. I think it's 27-24. Maybe it's 30-27. Not too dissimilar from last year's score, to be quite honest with you. In the beginning of the seasons, we always see the defense take a little bit more time to catch up to the offenses. So I think you will have more than 24 points on each side, or at least bare minimum 24 points. So I like a field goal spread between the winner and the loser of this game, but I do have the Buccaneers winning by 3. So officially, I'll go 27-24 Tampa Bay.
All right, my Locked On Cowboy listeners are not going to love this prediction. I just don't get the feeling that this game is going to be particularly close. Like, I think the Cowboys offense is going to be very clunky out of the gate, dealing with, a new left tackle who never took a snap at left tackle in the preseason or training camp at all. You've got a new starter at left guard, a new full-time starter at right tackle. The Cowboys' number 2 receiver is going to be Noah Brown, a career backup. The number 3 is probably Simi Fehoko, who has never caught a pass in an NFL game before. Like, there's just going to be stretches, David, in this game where the Cowboys' offense doesn't do anything. Like, they could have multiple straight drives where it's 3 and out. And that has me a little bit concerned because we know with Tom Brady, right? Like, you punt the ball back to him 2 or 3 straight times in a row, Bucs are going to come away with points. And I don't trust the Cowboys special teams unit. It's one of the worst special teams units in the NFL. I could see this game getting away from them a little bit. Now, the one thing I would say is the Cowboys defense, I think they're going to keep them in a lot of games. Like we've seen them last year against good opponents. Like they can control the line of scrimmage. The defensive backs are pretty good. I think they'll allow them to hang around, but I kind of like a 27-17 type of game here.
Yeah, Buccaneers fans would love that type of an outcome, Marcus. And you know what? I'm always happy to let the other hosts of these crossovers be a little bit more down about their team. I'm always okay being a little bit higher on the opposition. But let's be honest, and Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots can attest to this. Tom Brady lets you do that a little bit. Tom Brady lets you come in and kind of take the humble route and not be too brash. And then when things go your way, hopefully things can get a little bit more bolsterous at the end or than during the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys, like you said, you laid it out there perfectly. I hope your listeners actually appreciate what you just said, because it means they're going to get honest and they're going to get upfront coverage all season long of the Dallas Cowboys. And as a football fan myself, that's what I want for people. The people I listen to outside of our network, because I love the Locked On Network, but the guys I listen to outside the network, the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world, the Bucky Brookses, and guys like that, I listen to them because they give it to you straight. They don't sugarcoat anything. They don't try to dress it up to be more. They don't church it up, as we like to say.
Yep.
They give it to you straight. And I appreciate what you say. I'm sure your listeners are hoping that my Dak Prescott football IQ premonition kind of comes to fruition a little bit better.
Well, I would also say, just like last year, like the Cowboys can lose this game and you can still be really excited about like the way that the team is trending. Like we saw last year, like Dak looked healthy and he played well and the defense held up for the most part against Tom Brady. As long as it's something like that and it's not one of these, hey, it's a 38-10 massacre in Dallas. Week 1 has never meant less in the NFL, right? With a 17-game schedule, like it's just not that big of a deal.
Unless you're Carson Wentz going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Week 1 means nothing.
Listen, anytime that we can dunk on Carson Wentz at this podcast, we will do it. So, all right, let's recap this episode so far, David. We think the biggest matchup for both sides of the ball, and the biggest storyline for both of these teams is on the offensive line, right? A lot of new pieces for the Cowboys. 3 new interior offensive linemen for the Buccaneers. Certainly something worth keeping an eye on. We're also checking out the wide receiver cornerback matchup on both sides. I'm really interested to see Mike Evans against Trevon Diggs. That's an all-pro versus a Pro Bowl receiver. Should be a lot of fun. And then for the Cowboys, I've got them losing a tough game here in week 1, 27-17. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this game is closer than what I think, but that's what I've got for the Cowboys side of things. What about for the Bucs?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, the biggest storyline, obviously protecting Tom Brady with that new interior offensive line and those new pieces, and especially rookie Luke Gedeke. Like, how is he going to do against that Dallas Cowboys pass rush? And if I'm the Dallas Cowboys defense coordinator, I'm bringing all kinds of exotic movement to that rookie guard to see if I can take advantage of that. And then not only the receivers, but the tight ends. I mean, first and foremost, we had to find out which receivers Tom Brady's even going to have to throw to. I'm sure he knows a little bit better than those of us on the outside do at this point in time. But then the tight ends, can they force the Dallas Cowboys to kind of back off a little bit, play a little bit less aggressive by attacking the middle of that field, and also being effective there in the run game as blockers and all those things. And then, finally, I do have the Buccaneers winning. So we agree on that, which, I mean, look, if some of TV history kind of repeats itself when all the quote unquote experts agree, we tend to be wrong. So maybe Cowboys fans can find some solace in that, but I've got the Bucs covering the spread, winning by a field goal or a little bit more than that to kick off the season. Sunday Night Football, week 1. And, it's the start to a very long season, and perhaps, Marcus, a playoff preview between these two teams.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for this game to top the week 1 contest we saw last year, right? On Thursday Night Football. If this game is anything close to that, I think we should be in for a pretty fun night on Sunday Night Football. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Buccaneers your first listen every single day. Now, for your second listen, check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one Ultimate NFL Preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. All the same places that you would get the Locked On Bucs and the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check us out on YouTube. You can follow David at DHarrison82. Great follow. Absolutely. Does stuff for the Commanders and for the Buccaneers. You can follow me at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you guys next week.